Good morning, Shindo here. This morning discussing the so-called Russian hack of the DNC, which happened days before the DNC convention back in July. Of course, Putin is denying that the Russians did this, and of course, the United States and the people who are claiming this have presented no evidence that the Russians did hack the DNC. My opinion is that the reason the DNC wants to blame the Russians is because they want to cast Trump in even more a insidious, evil light than Trump himself cast himself into. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share my videos. This is from Bloomberg News. Putin says DNC hack was a public service. Russia didn't do it. Vladimir Putin said the hacking of thousands of Democratic National Committee emails and documents was a service to the public, but denied U.S. accusation that Russia government had anything to do with it. Quote, "Listen, does it even matter who hacked this data?" Unquote, Putin said in an interview in the Pacific port of Vladivostok on Thursday. Quote, "The important thing is the contents that was given to the public," unquote. U.S. official blames hackers guided by the Russian government for the attacks on the DNC servers earlier this year that resulted in WikiLeaks publishing about 20,000 private emails just before Hillary Clinton's nominating convention in July. The document showed attempts by party officials to undermine her chief Democratic rival, Bernie Sanders, and led to the resignation of the head of the DNC, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida. Putin, in power since 2000 and facing re-election in 18 months, has had an acrimonious relationship with Clinton since her failed attempt to, quote, reset relations as Secretary of State in 2009. Putin in 2011 blamed her personally for stoking the biggest protest of his rule by sending an activation, quote, signal to, quote, some actors, unquote, inside Russia. Clinton has compared his annexation of Crimea in 2014 to actions taken by Adolf Hitler before World War II. Quote, "There's no reason to distract the public's attention from the essence of the problem by raising such minor issues connected with the search for who did it," unquote, Putin said of the DNC breach. Quote, "But I want to tell you again, I don't know anything about it, and on a state level, Russia has never done this," unquote. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has high confidence that the government in Moscow was behind the theft of the DNC and other Democratic Party organizations seeking to propel Clinton to victory over Republican Donald Trump in November. A person familiar with the findings has said, "Trump has praised Putin as a great leader, and a billionaire's former campaign chairman spent years working for the Kremlin ally who was ousted for the Ukraine's presidency in 2014. Another hit piece on Trump here. Does the media even try to hide the fact that they are completely biased in this election? In a 2-hour conversation near Russia's eastern fringe, Putin touched on subjects ranging from the war in Syria to oil prices and trade with Russia. It came just 2 days before Putin, Barack Obama, and other world leaders gather at a group of 20 meeting in Hangzhou. The international DNC probe by CrowdStrike Inc., a cybersecurity company, traces the DNC break-in to two groups. It says are linked to Russian intelligence services. One, Cozy Bear, it says, is affiliated with the Federal Security Service, the main successor to the KGB, while the other, Fancy Bear, is said to be tied to the main intelligence directorate, a branch of the Defense Ministry. James Lewis, a cybersecurity expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington, said Russia's, quote, track record, unquote, of state hacking goes back to at least a decade, so Putin's denials aren't credible. Quote, nice try, but no goal, unquote, Lewis said. The digital net cast by the hackers had widened almost weekly. Security experts say it now includes congressional staffers, NATO generals, Washington think tanks, and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, adding another unpredictable element to a highly unusual election. The subsequent leaks have included the mobile number of House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, who said she was barraged with, quote, obscene calls within hours. Bernie burned. Putin also took a dig at the U.S. campaign and what he saw as an obvious party bias in favor of Clinton, saying that he, quote, couldn't imagine, unquote, that the information leaked from the DNC would be newsworthy for, quote, American society, specifically that the campaign headquarters worked in the interests of one of the candidates, in this case, Mrs. Clinton, rather than equally for all the Democratic Party candidates, unquote. Alexander Gostev, a chief expert at Kaspersky Lab, a Moscow-based software security firm, said of all the Russian-speaking hacking groups targeting government, Fancy Bear, quote, is the most notable, unquote. Malware linked to Fancy Bear was widely detected in Ukraine government computers during the elections that were held after the country's Kremlin-backed leader Viktor Yanukovych was deposed, Gustav says, adding that, quote, 6 or 7, unquote, groups may be tied to the Russian government. At the same time, Russia has come under attack by viruses linked to U.S. and U.K. intelligence services, Gustav said, adding that hacking efforts from China against Russian defense and nuclear agency have intensified in the past year. Snowden warning. Edward Snowden, the former National Security Agency's contractor who exposed U.S. surveillance secrets, said on Twitter last month that Russia, where he lives in exile, may have been behind the hack of the NSA-linked malware that was made public. The reason, Snowden said, may have been to, quote, influence the calculus of decision-makers wondering how sharply to respond to the DNC hacks, unquote. Putin said that even if Russia did want to try to influence the U.S. election through leaked secrets, it doesn't have the nuanced understanding of American politics required to succeed. Quote, to do that you need to have a finger on the pulse and get the specifics of the domestic political lives in the U.S., unquote, the Russian president said. Quote, I'm not sure that even our foreign ministry experts are sensitive enough. Putin, 63, said the state of hacking is so sophisticated that it's impossible to know the identities or locations of the people ultimately behind them. Quote, you know how many hackers there are today, Putin said? Quote, they act so delicately and precisely that they can leave their mark or even the marks of others at the necessity, time, and place, camouflaging their activities as that of other hackers from other territories or countries. It is an extremely difficult thing to check, if it's even possible to check. At any rate, we definitely don't do this at a state level, unquote. The Russians, if it is the Russians, are going to continue to release these so-called secrets. You know, it's no secret, as Putin points out, it's really no secret that the DNC was trying to get Clinton in there. They were trying to get Clinton in there from the very beginning. They were shocked that Bernie Sanders was getting any support. And folks, I'm very surprised after sitting back and watching what's been going on in this election that people still think that Hillary Clinton's going to be president. Now, I could be totally wrong. I've been wrong before, a couple times in my life, but I'm not wrong about this. An indication, folks, that Hillary Clinton's not going to be president is the fact that Bernie Sanders had such a following. The same people that voted for Bernie Sanders are not going to show up for Hillary Clinton. And a lot of the people in these polls are not the people who are going to vote for Trump. They're not being polled. They're not being polled because they're not the normal voters. Understand, when they do these polls, they're speaking to people who have voted in recent years, not to people who stopped voting because they figured their voice didn't matter anymore. So regardless of this hack, regardless of what's going on, and I think it's only going to get worse for Clinton. There's going to be more and more revelations. And the DNC and Democrats in general think it's in the bag. It's in the bag for Hillary Clinton. It's not. Folks, it's not. And I'm predicting, and have been predicting for some time, that Trump is going to be our next president. There's no doubt in my mind. I honestly, if Hillary Clinton does get the nomination, me, who's really, I don't really care about who becomes president because I don't like either one of them. So from that perspective, keep this in mind. I'm going to think that there's some shady stuff going on. So what do you think the people who voted for Trump are going to think and do? And when Trump becomes nominated, and I believe, obviously, that to be the case, what do you think all of these Black Lives Matter types are going to do? This election in November, regardless of who wins, I'm not going to be out in the street on election night. I can tell you that. We're going into some dark, dark times. And that should be obvious to anyone who has a brain. Now, if you want to hear this news, and I do at least one news story a day, if you want this to continue, click like, share, and subscribe. This is Shindo. Have a good day.